According to a study by the University of Gloucestershire, stalking behaviour is present in 94% of murders. The examination looked at 358 cases of killings and discovered that surveillance activity was recorded 63% of the time. It is a horrific thing to be on the other end of, and not something to take lightly. So many small incidents can escalate quickly and violently. In today's episode, we'll be exploring 2 nightmarish unsolved cases suspected of involving stalkers. But first, I'd like to thank Blissy for sponsoring today's episode. It's rare these days to find something more fulfilling and nourishing than a good night's sleep. Unfortunately, the only thing more rare than that is actually achieving that good night's sleep. Here at Cold Case Detective, we're passionate about good sleep because good sleep directly informs the quality of our work and the energy we muster to deliver our best efforts. The long hours and tireless passion simply wouldn't be in the cards if we constantly had to fight the fatigue that bad sleep promotes. It's why we're proud to partner with Blissy to help us achieve that good sleep and be kinder to ourselves. Blissy is the unquestioned powerhouse in the pillowcase market, stitching together the most effective and luxurious silk pillowcases with affordable prices. Each pillowcase is designed with deep-rooted consideration and formed with 100% mulberry silk, mirroring a type of softness you've never experienced. They are hypoallergenic, featuring all natural antibacterial properties, and are proven to reduce hair breakage by 43%. A Blissy pillowcase also improves skin health, prevents night sweats, and contains 0 toxic chemicals and dyes, receiving top marks by leading lifestyle critics such as Good Housekeeping and Oprah's O magazine. We've found that our improved sleep is heavily influenced by the cooling properties featured in each Blissy pillowcase that will actually keep you cool and relaxed through the night, unlike regular pillows. The cooling effect promises a better night's sleep, leading to us feeling more refreshed in the morning, giving us a kickstart to achieving our daily goals here at CCD. The best part of Blissy's partnership is it comes just in time for summer, making it the perfect gift for the weddings and birthdays filling up the calendar. Everyone needs to beat the heat of the dog days of summer, so go to blissy.com/coldcase, that's BLISSY.com/coldcase, or click the link below to get an additional 30% off your order and free worldwide shipping. Good sleep leads to a better life. Let Blissy take you there. And now let's dive in with today's mysteries. Dale Hay Jr. On the evening of February 3rd, 2006, Dana Dostal made her normal commute home from work. Dana was employed at a bank in Lake Isabella, California, and lived nearby in Weldon, which had a small population of around 2,160 people today, and is by all accounts a more isolated area in the Kern Valley Mountains. It was around 6 p.m., and Dana was driving on Kelso Creek Road from Highway 178 east of Lake Isabella. She thought she was the only driver on the long, dark stretch of road, but shortly thereafter, she came across someone else, a driver in a pickup truck. Dana later told KGET, "There was the truck that seemed to be stopped. It was slow moving, but it seemed to be stopped, so I came up on it. Still wasn't moving much, so I passed the vehicle. As I started to go round some of the curves, that's when I noticed the bright lights in my rearview mirror. She noted that the driver's lights were so bright she couldn't actually see. I couldn't see, so I slowed down real slow and the truck went around me and kind of slammed on his brakes in front of me. It seemed kind of like a cat and mouse game. If I sped up a little bit, he'd go right on my tail. If I slowed down, he wouldn't pass. He just stayed behind me." After this interaction, Dana, understandably shaken, attempted to evade the driver by turning into a residential area. She continued on her way, and by the time she reached her home, she thought that she had managed to shake the unsettling pickup truck driver. But as she pulled into her driveway, she realized she was wrong. The truck came to a stop a little away from her house, but when her boyfriend's young son, Willie, came to greet her at the front gate, the driver in the pickup fled from the scene. Inside the house, Dana told her boyfriend, 34-year-old Dale Hay Jr., about what had happened. While he was concerned, and Dana was still frightened, the two took comfort in the safety of their own home and began to relax and return to regular life. Dana began to do a wash while Dale prepared dinner. 5 to 10 minutes later, the car returned, its lights flashing through the window. Dale, both annoyed by the harassment and fearful for the safety of his family, went to investigate. The pickup had parked nearby, and Dale whistled at the driver as he exited the house and walked towards them. But the driver fled the scene again, going north on Kelso Creek Road towards Highway 178. 9-year-old Willie watched his father get into his Jeep and drive off after the pickup. What happened next is unclear. It's believed that the pickup driver pulled off the highway in front of 5231 Kelso Creek Road, and that Dale pulled up next to him. The 34-year-old was then shot in the face. He died at the scene, his vehicle rolling backwards against a fence. After Dale left, Dana and Willie watched a movie, but Dana became more alarmed as time passed and her boyfriend didn't return. Eventually, she and Willie got into her car to look for him. Barely a mile from home, they discovered Dale, dead in his Jeep. According to Dana, following the death of her boyfriend, investigators looked at all the common angles of a murder case. Was either Dana or Dale having an affair? Was either of them involved with drugs, guns, or criminal activity? But the answer was no to all of these questions. Dana and Dale lived a quiet, ordinary life. They were a happy couple, and Dale had no known enemies. He never gave any indication that he knew the driver who'd been harassing Dana on her way home. The case quickly grew cold, and has had no new leads since 2006. While there is no description of the driver available, the pickup truck which stalked Dana is described as light-colored, with a shell that's lighter in color than the rest of the truck. The shell may have been removed following the crime. It's possible the vehicle was an old Chevy or Ford. Investigators believe it's feasible the perpetrator lives or frequents the Kelso Valley area. There are few theories available in the case. Some online sleuths believe this was a random act of violence. Others that Dana had a long-term stalker, unbeknownst to her. Many have suggested that the driver was really after Dale in the first place and had lured him out by going after Dana. There is also some online speculation that this was some kind of prank gone horribly wrong. Either way, it seems that 16 years later, the police are no closer to finding justice for Dale and his family. His children still try to keep the case alive. His daughter stated, "In my heart and in my gut, I don't feel like it was random, but I have no proof, and obviously the police don't have any evidence to prove otherwise either." Dana has spent 16 years wondering if she was the intended victim. "I think for a long time, I felt guilty because I survived and he didn't. Maybe I was the target and not him. I was the one who pissed that guy off. Taking that one person's life has taken life from so many." Dale's case is still unsolved. If you have any information about his murder, you can contact the Kern County Sheriff's Office at 661-861-3110. Carolanne Jackson. On Friday, April 11th, 1997, Carolanne Jackson was returning home from her holiday when she decided to stop at a NatWest Bank ATM to withdraw money. At 9:30 p.m., the 50-year-old took out £500 from the machine on Penn Road in the town of Beaconsfield, England. She then continued on her way home. When she arrived at Apple Tree Cottage in Woodburn Green, near High Wycombe, Buckinghamshire, Carolanne called a friend to let them know she had gotten home safely. This was the last time anyone heard from her. When another friend called her the following morning, they received no response. It wasn't until one day later they discovered why. On the morning of Sunday, April 13th, concerned neighbors discovered Carolanne's body in her kitchen. Her hands and feet had been bound, and she had suffered a severe beating, including horrific injuries to her head. The contents of her cupboards and drawers were strewn all across the floors of the house, and several expensive items Carolanne had been wearing were gone, including several rings, a Rolex watch, and a 1930s Cartier bracelet. When the police arrived on the scene, they attempted and failed to open Carolanne's safe to check if anything had been stolen from there. Eventually, they managed to open it, and they discovered nothing had been taken. Carolanne was an antiques dealer who specialized in jewelry. Her safe held some of her most valuable pieces. She lived alone and was a regular churchgoer, and authorities were unable to come up with a personal motive for why anybody would want her dead. Her cause of death was initially unknown, as there were no signs of strangulation or a murder weapon. It was later established by the coroner that the 50-year-old had died from positional asphyxia, likely from lying unconscious, face first on the floor. Carolanne was known to be a cautious person. She had an alarm system set up in her house, which was not triggered on the night of her death, which was determined to be April 11th. Investigators came up with several theories shortly after they began looking into Carolanne's death. They suspected she may have been killed by a burglar who was aware of her job and knew she probably had expensive jewels in her home. They likely wanted to access the safe and injured the 50-year-old, and eventually killed her for refusing to give them the combination. Detectives also considered a link between Carolanne's murder and that of another woman, a nurse named Janet Brown, who was also 50 at the time of her death. Janet was beaten to death at her farmhouse in Radnage, Buckinghamshire in 1995. She was found naked and handcuffed in her home, but there were no signs of sexual assault. As nothing was taken from her house, the motive for this murder is unclear, and the case remains unsolved today. While the police felt there were similarities between the two cases, there is no concrete link between them. Just 2 months before Carolanne's death, she reported an incident to the police in which she felt she was being followed in her car by another vehicle, and when she got home, she found a man she didn't recognize standing outside. Over the next few months, Carolanne made several other reports where she noted that she felt like she was being stalked. While the police did take scent dogs to her home once in an attempt to locate the stalker, nobody was ever apprehended for this suspected crime. The police superintendent at the time, Alan Partridge, stated his belief in 1997 that Carolanne was the victim of someone who knew her line of business and had been watching her closely. Someone suspected she might have items at her home which would be of value. It is likely they had been hanging around the area waiting for her, and, indeed, may have been in the area in the earlier days or weeks. A year after her demise, Carolanne's mother, desperate for progress in the case, contacted a psychic. The psychic claims she had been killed by a woman, and that woman was accompanied by a man who had no part in the murder. She also suggested they had originally planned to hold Carolanne ransom, but at some point, they made the decision to take her life instead. In the 24 years since, there has never been any evidence to substantiate these claims. 11 months later, in March of 1999, the coroner's inquest concluded she had died at the hands of an unidentified, opportunistic thief. They believe she had been attacked on the night of the 11th as she unpacked her car, possibly by someone who had been waiting for her to return home. The culprit slipped inside her house as she went back and forth, and then attacked. It is unclear if Carolanne's killer was stalking her in the lead-up to the crime, or if the stalking incidents were something separate altogether. Carolanne's murder is still unsolved, as is Janet Brown's. If you have any information about either of these cases, you can call Crime Stoppers UK on 0800 555 111. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own theories and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.